NFL analysts aren't mincing words. The situation with Shedeur Sanders has become a lightning rod for criticism across the league. When a rookie quarterback doesn't get any first-team practice until his first live NFL snap, it's not just poor planning, it's malpractice. Analysts pointed to Cleveland's long history of failed quarterback development and warned that Sanders, despite his pedigree and potential, is being led down the same destructive path. And John Harbaugh's veiled critique only added fuel to the fire.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
This moment isn't just about Shedeur's rough entry, it's about the structure failing around him. Quarterbacks can't thrive without reps, rhythm, and real-time experience. Sanders hasn't been given any of that, and the emotional toll on him and his father is already visible. The Browns are under fire not just for losing games, but for losing direction. If they don't change course, or if Sanders doesn't get out, his career might become another cautionary tale in a franchise full of them. The Cleveland Browns had one job: develop their rookie quarterback. Not just keep him in the building. Not just toss him a playbook and hope for the best. Actually develop him. But based on what we saw in Week 11, they didn't even come close. Shedeur Sanders entered his first NFL game without ever practicing with the starting offense. Not once. No reps with the first-team receivers. No real-time chemistry with the guys protecting him. His very first time lining up with the actual starting unit? During a live game. That's not preparation. That's setting someone up to fail. He did, not because he lacks talent, not because he lacks intelligence, but because his team failed to give him the foundation he needed. The Browns didn't just mishandle a rookie. They potentially damaged his development in a way that could take years to fix. NFL analysts were quick to call it out. Former players saw it for what it was. But the words that really cut through the noise came from John Harbaugh. He didn't yell. He didn't slam the Browns by name. He didn't need to. His message was simple and devastating. Good teams prepare their backups. That was it. One sentence that exposed the entire Browns coaching staff without even mentioning them. A single comment that put a spotlight on what Cleveland didn't do. And the silence from the Browns? That said everything. No public ownership. No real explanation. Just business as usual. Meanwhile, Shedeur was left to shoulder the blame for a performance he never had a chance to succeed in. This isn't just about poor game planning. This is what systemic dysfunction looks like in real time. You draft a young quarterback with high upside, then you keep him on the sidelines without reps. You deny him the chemistry he needs. You don't let him develop timing with the offense. Then, when the season takes a turn, you toss him in front of the Wolves and pretend you're surprised when he struggles. That's not player development. That's organizational malpractice. And Deion Sanders made that clear. He wasn't just reacting as a father. He was reacting as a coach. As someone who understands how quarterbacks need to be nurtured. When he said his son's confidence had been damaged, that wasn't just emotion. That was insight. That was the result of watching his son be thrown into a high-pressure situation with none of the support he was promised. And now there's talk of a trade. People wondering whether Shedeur should ask out. And frankly, that conversation is more valid than it should be. Because the Browns haven't done anything to show they deserve him. If your rookie quarterback is only getting meaningful practice time with the starters in Week 12, what exactly have you been doing for the last 3 months? Let's not forget this is the same franchise that has cycled through quarterback after quarterback for years. They've never had a long-term answer. And now, even when they bring in a player with the talent and poise to possibly break the cycle, they treat him like an afterthought. Harbaugh's comment wasn't just about Shedeur. It was about what a real organization looks like. One that prepares everyone. One that understands the value of reps, timing, and chemistry. One that doesn't wait until disaster strikes to start developing their players. That's what the Browns did. They waited until it was already falling apart. Then they pushed Shedeur out there like a last-ditch experiment. And when it didn't work, they left him to answer for it. And now they want to give him first-team reps? Now that the media has turned up the pressure? Now that the football world has seen behind the curtain? It's too little too late. You don't get credit for doing the bare minimum after being exposed. And if Shedeur shows improvement in the next few weeks, it won't be a testament to Cleveland's coaching. It'll be proof that they wasted the first half of the season. Because Shedeur didn't magically get better. He was always capable. He just wasn't given the tools. This entire debacle has pulled back the curtain on how quarterback development is still a mystery to so many NFL teams. And it's not a complicated formula. Players need reps, they need time. They need consistency. Without that, even the most talented quarterback will stumble. David Carr, Josh Rosen, Marcus Mariota, Sam Darnold. They all had talent. They were all highly touted. But they walked into unstable environments and were never given the proper foundation. The result? Confidence shaken, careers derailed. That's the exact path Shedeur is staring down now if Cleveland doesn't make serious changes. But let's be honest, it shouldn't take public criticism from Coach Prime or a subtle rebuke from Harbaugh to force a team to do what it should have been doing all along. It shouldn't take backlash for a rookie quarterback to finally get real reps. The Browns aren't reacting out of conviction. They're reacting out of embarrassment. So now Shedeur has to climb out of a hole he didn't dig. He has to regain his confidence. He has to rebuild chemistry. He has to do everything he should have been doing in August. But now he's doing it under pressure, with people questioning his ability, and with his development timeline already disrupted. And that's the problem with Cleveland. They don't think long-term. They don't build around their quarterbacks. They draft them, then abandon the process. And when it inevitably fails, they move on and start over. If Shedeur stays, he's betting on that cycle being broken. He's betting that the same franchise that sabotaged his debut will suddenly learn how to support a young quarterback. That's a massive gamble. But if he walks away, if he demands a trade, if he finds a new home, who could blame him? There are teams that would build around him. Teams that would put him in a position to succeed. Teams that wouldn't throw him in the fire and act shocked when he gets burned. The Browns are at a tipping point. They can either fix this or lose another quarterback to their own dysfunction. But the clock is ticking. Shedeur deserves better. He's not a backup plan. He's not a mid-season experiment. He's a player who needs real support, real time, and real development. If Cleveland can't provide that, then someone else should. Let us know where you stand. Should Shedeur trust Cleveland to figure it out, or take control of his own career before it's too late? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you've seen this story one too many times, and subscribe for more as we keep following what could be one of the most important quarterback crossroads of the season. Right now, Shedeur Sanders is stuck between potential and a franchise that doesn't know what to do with it. And that's not a dramatic overstatement, it's a reality unfolding in real time. The Cleveland Browns took a talented, highly disciplined, football-savvy quarterback and stuck him on the shelf. Not to develop, not to prepare, but to wait. For what? No one really knows. Certainly not Shedeur. And now the cracks are showing. Let's be honest, this isn't about whether a rookie had a shaky first game. This is about the why behind it. Because Shedeur didn't get that shaky start because of nerves or inexperience or some inherent flaw in his game. He struggled because the Browns never gave him a fair shot to succeed. There were no first-team reps. No live reps with the guys he'd be playing with. No weeks of building chemistry or timing or trust. Just practice squad drills and scout team duties while the real offense prepared with someone else. Then, in Week 11, they told him to lead. Led who? Led how? You don't hand someone the keys to a car they've never test-driven and expect them to win the race. But that's what Cleveland did. Then they stood back and watched the collision like they had no idea what caused it. And that's the part that stings, not just for Shedeur but for anyone paying attention. Because this was a choice. The Browns chose to ignore their own developmental responsibilities. They chose to underprepare a quarterback they drafted. And now they're acting like this was just part of the learning curve. No, this was avoidable. Even before the game, the warning signs were there. The lack of preparation. The lack of reps. The absence of any kind of clear development plan. What happened wasn't a surprise. It was the predictable result of a team refusing to take quarterback development seriously. And then, to twist the knife, John Harbaugh, head coach of the rival Ravens, dropped a statement that said everything without saying anything. He didn't have to name Cleveland. All he had to do was describe what a competent organization looks like. A team that prepares its backups. A team that understands that any quarterback on any week could be called into action. A team that builds players up before they're needed. The contrast was sharp. And it was intentional. Because everyone watching knew, the Browns were being called out. And what did Cleveland do in response? They gave Shedeur some first-team practice reps, for the first time all season. After the damage was done. After the media backlash. After Deion Sanders gave an emotional, frustrated response about how his son's confidence had been shaken. After Harbaugh lit them up without ever mentioning them directly. And now the Browns want credit for doing the right thing? Too late. You don't get a trophy for showing up after the crisis. You don't get praise for finally doing what you should have done from day one. And if Shedeur turns things around now, it will only prove how badly they failed him before. Because the growth was always possible. The potential was always there. He just needed support. He needed time. He needed reps. And now we're watching him play catch up while the franchise acts like they're still in control of the situation. They're not. Shedeur's future is now his to control. Because when a team fumbles your development this badly, you start asking bigger questions. You start wondering whether this is the place to grow. Whether this is the system to trust. Whether staying loyal to a team that didn't invest in you early on is worth the risk. And let's be honest, the history here doesn't help Cleveland's case. Their quarterback room has been a revolving door for 2 decades. They've drafted talent. They've signed veterans. They've made trades. And none of it sticks. Not because every quarterback was flawed, but because the system is flawed. They don't commit to development. They don't protect their investments. They don't create an environment where a quarterback can take root and thrive. And when it doesn't work out, they move on, quickly, quietly, without accountability. That's what Shedeur is up against now. Not just pressure from the outside, but a system that's failed other quarterbacks the same way it's failing him now. But here's the difference. Shedeur's not just a player. He's a personality. He's got Coach Prime behind him. He's got attention. Visibility. People care about what happens to him and they're watching. That visibility is power. Because it means Cleveland can't just sweep this under the rug. They can't quietly bury the issue. There are too many eyes on them now. Every snap Shedeur takes. Every rep he doesn't get. Every post-game interview. Every quote from Dion. Every subtle jab from a coach like Harbaugh. It's all being tracked. And if Cleveland doesn't change course, fast, this story is going to spiral out of their control. Because the next step might not be internal frustration. It might be public action. If Shedeur decides that this environment isn't serving him, the idea of a trade is no longer some far-fetched rumor. It becomes a legitimate option. And it wouldn't be hard to find a landing spot. Teams that actually know how to build around a quarterback, teams with a plan, would line up to take a chance on him. Because everyone knows the raw materials are there. The only thing missing is a real opportunity. And if that happens, if Shedeur leaves and flourishes elsewhere, the Browns will have no one to blame but themselves. They had the chance. They had the talent. They had the time. And they squandered all of it. Right now, Cleveland is living on borrowed time. They've started giving Shedeur real reps, but that clock is ticking. One bad week. One sign of regression. One more misstep in how they handle his development, and it could all collapse. So the question now isn't just about Shedeur. It's about Cleveland. Have they learned anything? Will they finally take this seriously? Will they stick with him long enough to undo the damage they caused? Or are they just waiting for another excuse to hit the reset button and draft someone else next year? Because that's the real fear, that nothing changes. That this week's progress is performative. That the Browns haven't actually bought into Shedeur as the future. That they're just managing headlines and waiting for the heat to die down. But that won't cut it. This isn't just a one-game story. This is a developing saga that speaks to everything wrong with how some teams handle young quarterbacks. It's about broken systems. About bad leadership. About the emotional toll of being handed a role you weren't given the chance to prepare for. Shedeur Sanders deserves better. He deserved better the day he was drafted. So now the pressure isn't on him anymore. It's on the Browns. Prove that you believe in the quarterback you brought into your building. Prove that you've learned from your past. Prove that you're more than a franchise that destroys potential before it ever has the chance to grow. Because if you don't, you'll lose him. What we're watching unfold with Shedeur Sanders isn't just a development issue, it's a full-blown identity crisis for the Cleveland Browns. Because when a team repeatedly finds itself in the same situation with different players, different coordinators, different plans, the problem isn't bad luck. It's who they are. Let's call this exactly what it is. Cleveland doesn't know how to develop quarterbacks. Not consistently. Not responsibly. Not like a team that values long-term success over short-term damage control. And now, that dysfunction has landed squarely on the shoulders of a player who deserves none of it. The moment Shedeur walked into that huddle during his first NFL action in Week 11, you could already feel the disconnect. Not from a lack of talent. Not from fear. But from being out there with teammates he hadn't practiced with. A quarterback learning his offense on the fly. A franchise that decided his first real shot with the starting unit should come in front of the entire world. How is that acceptable? In what reality does a team spend months drafting, promoting, and pretending to believe in a young quarterback only to keep him out of the mix entirely until the season's well underway? and then act shocked when it doesn't go smoothly? That's not football strategy. That's malpractice. And now, after the fact, the damage is already creeping in. Shedeur's confidence? Rattled. His rhythm? Unseen. His trust in the people guiding his career? Understandably shaken. And we know that's not speculation. We heard it from the man who knows him best. His father, his coach, his closest observer. Deion Sanders didn't hold back. His frustration wasn't just emotional, it was diagnostic. Because he's lived football long enough to know exactly what went wrong here. And more importantly, what it cost. Deion said it plainly, they broke his son's confidence. And that doesn't just happen in one game. That happens when a player realizes the people in charge weren't looking out for him. When they find out their development wasn't a priority. That they were plan C all along. And when John Harbaugh weighed in, it hit even harder. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't even targeted. It was just truth. He spoke about how good teams prepare everyone. And when the Ravens coach, a guy who has managed both stars and backups with success, takes that stance, it sends a very public message about how real organizations operate. You don't wait until chaos to build chemistry. You don't let your backup rot on the scout team while your offense builds identity without him. You keep your quarterbacks ready. Not just in theory but in practice. In the huddle. On the field. In timing drills. Because when the moment comes, and it always does, they need to be more than a warm body. They need to be a leader. The Browns didn't give Shedeur that chance. They sat on his potential. They ignored the process. And when they needed him, they handed him the keys to a car he'd never driven, going 80 miles per hour in the middle of a highway, and acted shocked when it swerved. And now the question isn't just whether Shedeur can bounce back. The question is whether he should have to do it in Cleveland. Because let's be real, if a player has to recover from the way his own team treated him, that's not a development arc. That's damage control. And Shedeur shouldn't have to rebuild trust, rebuild chemistry, and rebuild confidence all at once just to earn the opportunity he should have had from the start. People are already floating trade rumors, and that shouldn't be seen as dramatic. It's a rational response to dysfunction. Because at some point the calculus changes. If the environment isn't healthy, if the system is broken, then staying becomes a bigger risk than leaving. This isn't about entitlement. It's about survival. Quarterbacks don't get infinite chances in this league. Careers can stall in a season, sometimes in a single month. And if Shedeur's next few games are rocky, it won't matter why. It won't matter that he didn't get the reps or the support. It'll be framed as a failure of talent, not of preparation. That's the reality the Browns created. And that's the burden Shedeur now carries. So what's next? Cleveland has to commit. Not just in words. Not in press conferences or half-hearted quotes about confidence and growth. They have to show it. With reps, with consistency, with a real plan. That means letting Shedeur work with the starters every week. That means building the game plan around him. That means accepting the growing pains instead of running from them. If they back off now, if they decide he's not ready, or shift him down the depth chart or pivot back to someone else, they're not just repeating history. They're confirming it. They're proving every critic right. They're telling the league and Shedeur and the fan base, we haven't learned a thing. But if they stick with him, if they give him real time, real development, real belief, then this season could still be salvaged. Not in terms of wins, but in terms of long-term investment. Because Shedeur isn't just a prospect. He's a potential cornerstone. And if they treat him like one, maybe they can change their story. And if not, then he needs to go. He needs to go before the environment breaks him completely. Before the weight of bad leadership overshadows what he can be. Before the maybe he's not the guy whispers turn into headlines. Because the NFL has a long memory for busts, and a short one for context. And make no mistake, there are teams that would treat him differently. Teams that would build around him. Teams that would actually develop him. The question is, will the Browns let this spiral, or will they fight for a player they already let down? Right now, Shedeur's name is trending for all the wrong reasons. But it doesn't have to stay that way. He still has time. The Browns still have time. But that window? It's small. It's closing fast. Every practice rep from here on out matters. Every snap he takes, every call the coaches make, every public comment, it all matters. Because this is no longer just about a rookie quarterback trying to make his way in the league. This is about whether the Cleveland Browns are capable of breaking their own toxic pattern, or whether they're doomed to repeat it. So what's it going to be? Because here's the thing. If the Browns fumble this again, if they turn their backs on Shedeur or slow walk his development into irrelevance, It won't just be another chapter in their long history of quarterback failures. It'll be the chapter that finally exposes them as an organization incapable of learning. We're not talking about an undrafted flyer or a practice squad filler. Shedeur Sanders was drafted because he wasn't just another name. He was brought in with expectations, with pedigree, with composure. The kind of rookie who doesn't just play the game, he studies it, he absorbs it, he leads. And what did Cleveland do with that? They parked him. Then shoved him into a live game when everything else fell apart. Not because they believed in him. Because they had no one else. And that's the part that burns the most. He wasn't seen as a future franchise QB. He was seen as a contingency plan. A what if? Maybe. A luxury pick they didn't feel the need to actually invest in. Now Shedeur is forced to carry the weight of an organization's panic, thrown into the fire without the fireproof suit, and everyone's watching to see whether he burns or survives. But let's be clear, this isn't just on him. If he does struggle in the coming weeks, that's not proof that he wasn't ready. That's proof that Cleveland didn't get him ready. And the league knows it. Coaches know it. Former players know it. Fans know it. Even John Harbaugh knows it, and he didn't even have to say their name to drag them through the mud. What Harbaugh said wasn't controversial. It was football 101. You prepare your backup. You get them reps, you make sure they're ready, not just physically but mentally, emotionally, and strategically. That's not a luxury. That's a responsibility. A baseline. And the Browns? They blew right past it. So now the team is in a crisis of their own making, trying to salvage the situation while pretending like this was always the plan. It wasn't. We all know it wasn't. And unless they fully pivot to supporting Shedeur with intention, transparency, and consistency, this thing is going to blow up all over again. Because this isn't a developmental slow start anymore. This is a career inflection point. So the question isn't whether Shedeur has the potential to succeed. He does. The real question is whether Cleveland has the capacity to get out of its own way and let him. Let us know in the comments, are the Browns finally doing what they should have from the start, or is this just damage control in disguise? Like the video if you're tired of watching young talent get wasted, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next twist in a quarterback story that's already too familiar.